Hello, folks. We're going to give everybody a chance to join here in just a few minutes, and then we'll get started. I hope everybody has had a wonderful week and are getting ready for Easter coming up in about a week and a half. I think our spring break starts next week, so that's kind of fun. Again, I'm just going to give another minute or two for folks to join, and then I will begin the workshop this week, which is Friendships, Why Are They So Hard? So stay with me and we'll get started. Okay. Thanks, Brett and Elizabeth, Heather, Jackie, Julie, Kelly, Carrie, Lori, Mary, Tara. Thanks so much for joining us. So happy to have you. Okay. All right, and just a quick reminder before I get going, which will be in just a moment. If you have any questions, you can post those in both the chat and also the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we get to those. All right, let's get started. Hi, my name is John Willson, and I'm the Executive Director of SOAR. We're a high adventure summer camp and boarding school and gap year program serving kids diagnosed with learning disabilities, along with ADHD. We host an almost monthly webinar series. We do it in the fall and the spring. We've got one more next month, and make sure to check that out. Today, we're going to be talking about friendships. Why are they so hard? And a good focus, a good portion of this webinar will be focused on how we can do things to mitigate those opportunities and encourage better friendships. So let's get started. All right. What are some of the whys? We come on too strong. When I was a young boy, I was born in Santiago, Chile. My parents were expats living there. And when we moved back to the States and moved to Dallas, I had a next door neighbor who would become my best friend, but that did not start out well, because the moment I met him, I grabbed him and hugged him and greeted him like we do in Chile, and he was just completely overwhelmed. And so we have a tendency to come on too strong. Sometimes we're not a team player. We're more focused on what we want than what others want. Sometimes we have too many why questions. One of my nicknames growing up was Mr. Scientific, and the reason I was called that was I would ask questions, and when you ask a question, the rest of the class is like, and the teacher said, now that's the scientific process, is to ask questions. And so my nickname became Mr. Scientific. We're impulsive. We overwhelm others. We have a need to control situations. Those of us who have these space bubbles, and some people have really, really massive space bubbles. They don't want you bumping into their bubble. And some of us are just like, we have these little bitty space bubbles, and we're kind of in your space, and that can be kind of off-putting. And then some of us tend to be very ultra sensitive, and we overreact to situations, and it becomes particularly difficult and challenging to deal with somebody who's always overreacting to situations. So what do? Well, when kids are younger, we have to spend more time and energy helping manage those relationships. And so we do the heavy lifting. But as our kids are going to get older, they're going to have to learn the skills necessary to help navigate friendships and relationships and social relationships and dynamics in a way that that are critical. When my son, who I often talk about, was a little guy, he did not mind being overwhelming or in your face or being weird and awkward. He was a weird little dude, and he would run up to people and get right in their face and say purple, and people just didn't understand him. And it wasn't until he got to his eighth or ninth grade that he decided that he just didn't, he didn't want to be that weird little guy anymore. And he went from being a kid that folks avoided because he was weird and awkward to being one of the most popular kids in school. And when he walked across the stage, got a standing ovation because he was the guy that was willing to stand up to teachers and stand up to bullies, and was funny and clever, and did really cool things like a prom proposal at a pep rally, and so as they transfer into late adolescence and adulthood, things do get better. And I think it's sometimes really important to understand that there's hope. All right. So let's talk about making friendships. Solid friendships are based on similar interests. Who are you drawn to? Well, you're drawn to people that like the same things that you like. My best friend in the world is a gentleman named Corey, and we hang out at least once a week, and he comes over and we watch Forged in Fire. And we enjoy fellowship, and we watch that show together, and we're both sort of interested in that, and we also like camping, and we also like to do whitewater activities together, and so those similar interests forge a bond between us. And so when kids come to camp, who do they connect with? Well, they connect with the kids that are reading the same things that they're reading, or playing the same video games that they're playing, or watching the same anime that they're watching. And so I think it's really important to understand that interest and compatible social competence certainly are what draw people together. So we're gonna how do you teach social competence? And it's a little bit different when kids are older versus when they're younger. You've got to do more of the heavy lifting when they're younger. They're going to learn some of those strategies and practice some of those skills. But I want to give you an idea. And somebody told me this at a conference, and I love the idea, and that is, watch a Spanish-speaking soap opera with because then you can't understand what they're saying, but they're so animated, and the physical expressions on their faces and the gesticulating that's happening. Watch it together with your child and say, what do you think they're thinking and feeling right now? And sometimes you can educate others about what people might be thinking and feeling, and it might be insightful for you to hear what they think is happening. I've talked a little bit about the space bubbles and proximity, these days that's being taught by stay 6 feet away from each other, 3 feet, but very often, if this is a person and this is a person and they're talking, and one moves closer like this, what does the other one do? Well, they move away. Some of our kids, then they respond by just moving closer again, and they're not picking up on those important social cues. And so role playing that and practicing that and understanding that those are some of the things that are going to occur can go a long way. And then now we're going to talk about the successful play date, because a good play date is going to lead to opportunities to practice some of those social relationships. So it starts with establishing, recording, and verbalizing the house rules and making sure that your child knows what they are. We don't let the dog out of his pen, because we don't want the dog getting all frantic, and the person who might be coming over might be afraid of the dog. We don't play in my mother's office. And again, these are just potential rules. It's important that your child understands that the guest is always right, and teaching that skill. The guest always goes first. We don't spend time in rooms with closed doors. And so you're setting up some basic rules. these are some examples. What are your rules going to be? What are you going to create in a situation like this one, so that you are setting up the expectations, and then you have your child introduce those rules to their guest. All right. So now we're going to create the environment. All right. So I think it's really important that play dates generally involve only 2 kids, because when you add a 3rd kid, what might happen is that the 2 others might connect and then leave your son or daughter out in the cold. And that's not at all what you want. And so play dates generally only involve 2 kids. All right. Play dates also do not include siblings. And siblings might feel really left out here, or they'll want to show off. And I think it's really important to have a plan for the siblings, so that they're equally entertained, so that they're engaged in a way so they're not interrupting this important time. Lock away valuable toys and possessions that you don't want to have broken or have a problem with. And then I'm a huge fan of making your home the most inviting home ever. You've got the coolest snacks and the greatest toys and the most outstanding things. One of the things that we bought recently that has been a huge hit with my daughter's friends is we've got an Oculus, and some really awesome games for the Oculus. And not everybody has one of those. And so we create this environment where it's thoughtful and peaceful and loving. When my kids' friends come over, we engage with them in a thoughtful way, check in with them, let them know that they're welcome and appreciated, but then we don't hover over them, and we give them the space in order to do what they need to do. Now, on the first couple of play dates, you want to hover, but not in a way that you're really sort of obvious about it, but you just want to make sure that if you need to intercede, if you see something happening that isn't going to go well, then again, this is an educational opportunity for your child to develop those really critical social skills that sometimes our kids are lagging behind in. All right, and so the element of timing. Sometimes length is important, and a little less time is better than more time where things start to kind of drag out. The last 15 minutes, honestly, it's the first few minutes of a play date and the last 15 minutes of the play date are 2 of the most important components. When it's over, conduct a social autopsy, and I'll explain what that is here in just a little bit, kind of a teaser right there. And then eventually you want to graduate to overnights in your home, not somebody else's home, in your home, because we understand that sometimes our children need home court advantage and require the opportunity and the support of a loving adult. And then finally, the graduation is progressed to play dates and maybe overnight in somebody else's home. And so as we work through those steps and we help coach and teach our kids to have those experiences, that can be just wonderfully critical. Growing up for me was not easy. I was often left out of parties. I was so many of those things that we mentioned just a few minutes ago as to why friendships are so difficult. And they resulted in some painful memories. But my parents tried and kept trying, and they created a successful environment for me to learn and grow and have opportunities to engage with other kids. So I also want to think about, what is it your kids are really wanting? Do they just want good acquaintances? Are they looking for a companion? Are they looking for genuine friendship? Do they need a bestie, a best friend? And I think it's also really important to understand that in order to kind of go up that chain, you've got to do some things. And some of those things that you have to do as a child is you have to be willing to compromise. You have to be willing to sometimes let your friends get their way versus you always getting your way. And for some of our kids, that's really difficult. Sometimes you have to be able to laugh off differences and not take them deeply personally. which can, as you know, can be challenging for some of our kids. You have to learn to be more supportive. And sometimes that means listening more than you're talking. You also want to make sure that you're supporting the other interests that kids have. And if they're not things that you're interested in, but they are, you want them to feel like you care about that, because the things that you care about, it matters to you, the people you want to be around, if they care about those things too. You want to coach and talk about sensitivity to others' needs or feelings, which is a huge part of the social autopsy, and understanding, were you sensitive to others' needs and their feelings? Sometimes when we get a friend, we're so thirsty for that friend that we get really jealous and possessive, and we don't want them to interact with others. I know that I have seen relationships struggle and end for both of my children because they were uncomfortable with their friends that they thought were their best friends having relationships with other kids that they were not a part of. And then I think it's finally, it's really important that you work with your child to do this in all arenas of their life, whether it's with you or their siblings or a friend or even another adult figure, is to communicate their displeasure without venom or anger. And the best way to do that is to practice, is to have opportunities where you are engaging in that way in a thoughtful, constructive capacity. All right, so keeping friends, be realistic. My circle of friends growing up was very small. I had 2 or 3 quality friends, and I had to be happy with that. As I grew older, that began to expand. But for some of our kids, they're just different enough that having one good friend would be an amazing opportunity, and then not chasing away that friendships, because I think what I've seen and found in both my kids as well as kids we serve is they're really good at making friends. It's much harder to keep friends. Practice skills during board games and cards, and so creating opportunities where they're taking turns, and then they're gracious in victory or defeat, and they don't get angry, and it isn't so important that they win. It's important that they had a chance to play and that they follow those rules. Failure as you're moving forward is going to be more common than success. It's just a sheer fact that some of the challenges that we possess as our children have as young men and women, they're dealing with either a learning disability or ADHD, that the social constructs are going to be a challenge for us, and each time it's a stepping stone towards where we want to get. A few more pitfalls and things to consider when you want to keep friends. It's important to make sure that you're giving your friend more deposits and more encouragement than you are criticizing or taking withdrawals from them. This saying of putting out the candle, you can really dampen a relationship by being overly critical of what other kids are doing, and you want to try and avoid that. I've got this slide here of canoers facing away from each other, and they're both paddling in different directions. And so when that happens in friendships, the boat isn't going anywhere. It's just going to maybe go in circles, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And those situations, generally result in the end of a friendship. As a parent, be alert for bullying, and at some point I may do a full workshop on bullying, but you can't, it's hard to change victims and it's hard to change bullies. What you can change, though, is if you've got a group of individuals that are engaged together, they just won't tolerate it. And in a case where you are trying to engage and nurture your child through friendships, you might have to be the one who is on the alert for bullying, whether your child is the bully or the person being bullied, and have really honest ways to deal and address that. And part of that is just having kids be honest about their feelings and use I statements. I really felt bad when you said that to me, and it hurt my feelings. And if you have another child who is just consistently bullying your child, that friendship needs to end. And then always be alert for potential victimization. Our kids are fragile, right? And so we want to make sure that we're surrounding them with people and with friends that are willing to kind of lift them and nurture them. If you haven't seen the movie The Way Back, I encourage you to watch it. It's about a young kid who reminds me a lot of some of the kids that we work with, and finding somebody that understands and sees just how extraordinary and special they are, and the way that that we can protect our kids from people who try and diminish them in any capacity. All right. I think that identifying with a group of similar strengths, or finding opportunities where your child can engage with other kids, is critical. I've thrown out a bunch here. I would love for anyone in the chat to toss out ones they don't see that they might want to share with other people. Archery, there are junior Olympic archery development teams in almost every major community in the United States, and kids can learn archery. And one of the wonderful things about archery is it's a solo sport. You're not relying on others, but you're participating with others. Art classes, chess club, community service, dance teams, gaming groups, martial arts, especially if you've got a really good, thoughtful sensei, music, marching band, outdoor clubs, writing clubs, robotics, scouts, spiritual groups. Both of my kids have been on mission trips and have experienced great success with their wilderness camp as part of the spiritual group that we're a part of. Being involved in sports, the sportsman club, for kids that love hunting and fishing, swim teams, and programs like SOAR are a great idea. Nicole mentioned that we've got cool clubs at our public libraries, and also the Out School has some nice social clubs. Great example. I'm going to move on to my next slide, but feel free to add more things to the chat, because I think that's absolutely critical to knowing how and when and where to create these opportunities for our kids to practice these relationships. And if any of these become toxic, pull them out. Don't just try and weather the storm. Pull them out of those experiences and find new ones. We're going to continue talking about keeping friends using a proactive goal setting approach. And so, something like, you can send 3 texts and Snapchats a week. Now that's for both the kid who will never send a text or a chat, or for the kid that's going to overwhelm somebody with 30 texts or Snapchats. And then aim for something like 2 play dates each month. I think it's important to have access to support systems, and there are social skill groups. Maybe you employ a coach, or you look for a coach of a sports team that is going to be particularly sensitive, or do what my wife did. She became the soccer coach, didn't know a thing about soccer, but she wanted to create and manage a situation for our son that would be successful. And in doing so, they developed some beautiful bonds with kids and parents that last to this day. And sometimes there might be an older kid in the neighborhood, or somebody older that is just really thoughtful and kind and is willing to be a mentor and kind of help your child overcome some of the challenges. I'm pretty confident that at some point my parents, said to Larry, hey, that Johnny can be, a little much, and we really appreciate if you just sort of, keep an eye on him and help him stay out of trouble. And, and that helped foster what ended up being a very robust friendship through my adolescence. recuperative strategies. Failure is a stepping stone to success. And so the idea of failing forward is one that I really love very much. And so as we are working and trying to find our path, sometimes we're going to have a misstep, and learning from those missteps. And we do that through something called the social autopsy. And the social autopsy is something that will examine what happened, and then we try and peel away the layers, like layers of an onion, and try and examine to get to the core of what it was that absolutely went wrong. What went so wrong that we created a situation where it just wasn't good. And you're asking questions, but allowing your child to sort of lead them towards the answer, so they get that aha moment and they can understand what it is that they're going to do differently next time. And then if your child was wrong, role play the apology so that they really can understand their role in it, and find a way to make amends in an honest, thoughtful way. But role playing that with you in advance, because that allows you and they to practice and fine tune how that's going to go. All right. So we're going to just wrap up with a couple thoughts. And if you have any questions, now would be a great time to put them into the chat bar while I give you my final thoughts. Work with your child to choose the strategies that you think are going to be most successful for them. Implement those strategies and be consistent. Make sure that you're talking to each other and that you're actually doing these things in a thoughtful, purposeful way. And so if you're going to do role plays, do them every night. If you're going to do the social autopsy, try and do it often so that your child recognizes and understands that process, and it can become second nature for them. Get help when you need it. Mentors and coaches and other professionals can be a huge resource when you're dealing with some of these things. Celebrate positive results and evaluate the needs, what's going to happen next. But celebrating a successful play date and creating really wonderful opportunities for folks to learn from what they do. And then finally, if you're doing something and it stops working, it's time to choose a new strategy. And as kids get older, we're going to have to be more creative about the strategies we develop. So, in closing, have fun. Make sure that your kids are in a safe, quality, positive environment, and that you're having a chance to role play some of these things and have practice opportunities so we can continue to engage our kids in thoughtful, meaningful ways that lead to healthier friendships, being excluded less, and developing those relationships that are going to help see us through difficult times. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Now we're going to answer some questions. All right. The first question comes from Mary, and she wrote, the biggest challenge is my son's willingness to step outside his comfort zone to meet new kids and create new bonds based on commonalities. And that's accurate. That is a challenge. And so and you can do really little baby steps, but I think that when you create opportunities, and I'll give you an example. Kids come to SOAR, all right? And your child might be a kid who comes to SOAR and is timid and is tentative about creating bonds. By the time we finish dinner, kids are talking to each other and trying to figure out what others are interested in, and being really thoughtful about engaging in those relationships in really productive, positive ways. And so opportunity, and trying to continue to find ways to develop those so that your child can practice. Jenny wrote, my 18-year-old in general always has one or two friends. The problem we see is he waits for them to always make the plan. It's always what they want and where. It doesn't seem healthy. He always waiting on their call because he wants to be social. You know what, Jenny? I am still sometimes plagued by this. One of the great joys in my life is I'm a whitewater canoeist, and rather than set up a time when I'm expecting others to meet me at a location. I'm waiting for invites. And when they don't come and I hear people win, it really hurts my feelings. However, I have to be willing to sort of demonstrate that by making a plan and inviting others, I'm telling you that I want to be with you. And so if you don't put yourself out there in that capacity, people may assume that you just really aren't interested. And so, like the question before, pick one time that you and your son are going to think of what's something that you really want to do and invite others to, and just try it, just practice it one time, you know. And then if that was successful or not successful, examine what and why, what worked, what didn't work, and then try it again. Sylvia wrote, what suggestions do you have when children have differing physical abilities? For example, my daughter uses an assistive device for walking. Well, that is a wonderfully complicated question. And my answer is that sometimes we take the physical ability of one and it becomes the center point of what we're doing. I've mentioned a few times my best friend growing up, and his name was Larry. Larry was legally blind. And as a neighborhood, we loved playing football. And so what position could Larry possibly play? Well, because Larry was legally blind, it wasn't safe for him to be running because he might run into something. However, his hearing was particularly acute. And so if you yelled, I'm open, Larry could throw a ball right to where you were. And so we used his disability as the focal point of his ability and then centered the activity around that. And so finding opportunities that either highlight the advantages of the disability that she may have, which is tricky, or choosing activities that level the playing field and don't require her to be able to run, jump, hop, skip, but are going to allow her to continue to be successful. And you've got to get really creative about what those might be. All right. So those are some great questions. I hope that those answers are adequate. We have one, are there any more before I close out this webinar? This is called a pregnant pause, when I wait and let you come up with any additional questions. Okay, well, I'll remind you again that my webinar next month is on May 10th, and I'll be talking about some camping and outdoor skills and giving you some ideas for things that you can do with your children that will get them outside and have a good time. I want to let you know that I appreciate all of you. You are welcome to share with anybody that you like this webinar, and we have a host of them on our website at soarnc.org/webinars, and you can go back and watch any of them that you like. And then finally, make sure you check out our programs. Everything is filling really fast, but we hope to continue to find ways to serve your kids. Be well, have fun, hug your kids, and thanks so much for joining me. All right, bye-bye.